you up front. If you see my little label down there, over there, I'm a solutions architect, not a software engineer. So what that basically means is I'm a consultant. I've been a consultant for nearly 30 years, delivered, give or take, $16 million plus in services over those years, probably a little higher. Been working in enterprise software for the majority of those 30 years. But the key thing is that as a consultant, there are no stupid questions. So if you have questions, comments, feel free to drop them in. Okay, I will not berate you in any way, unlike some software engineers you may know. Okay, so feel free to do that. Also, for anybody who's watching this on a replay, it takes YouTube a little time to process a live stream after it's finished and to make it available to myself for any kind of editing or updates. Once that's available, though, I will be dropping into the description the timestamps for various topics that we may cover. So if you're watching this on a replay sometime in the future, check out the description for timestamps so you can drop directly to where you're most interested in. Okay? So what's the topic today? So in the description, I mentioned that what we're going to be doing today is really kind of taking a step back. This is actually my second live stream. First live stream was doing a little bit of live coding and showing some people what the IDE, which is VS Code that I use, and what that looks like when you're using Codex, which is the coding agent by OpenAI, or whether you are using Claude by Anthropic, another coding agent. Both of those are plugins, basically, or what is also known as CLI, which is command line interfaces for your IDE and environment. Hello, Armal. If I try to, because I'm a consultant, okay, I'm very big on trying to define terms and concepts as much as I can within kind of the allotted time. But if I say something you don't understand, feel free to drop it into the chat, and I'm happy to try to explain it in more detail. I try not to use too many acronyms, and if I do, I usually try to define them either before or after, so you have some context. So with this live stream, my plan is to take a little bit of a step back because I got some interesting feedback on the last stream, and I think people are very confused regarding what either coding agents or platforms they should use. My take is this: there is no better time in history to embrace technical skill sets. So if you have some technical skill sets, or you've always wanted to develop your technical skill sets, there is no better time. Because as somebody who has a technical background like myself, but who's not a trained software engineer or a software engineer in the sense that all I do is code all day, what I do is I implement enterprise software. So that has had me working on mainframes, Linux, Unix, AIX, Windows, distributed systems. The list goes on. Lots of different integration points, whether it's databases or upstream or downstream, custom solutions. I mean, I'm basically what I like to refer to, and what I tell others, I'm a jack of all trades when it comes to the technical world, but a master of none. However, what has really changed in the last few months, as many of you probably are aware of, is that with the advent of the AI agent coding models that they've released and interfaces that they have provided through some of these companies, it is mind-blowing. So if you've got a technical background, you understand some basics, you can really leverage that skill set in building something that you might want to build. And my goal, I've got a few different videos on this channel, but one of the videos I have I talk about kind of figuring out what your lane is, right? In the world of AI, what is the lane that you want to be in? What is the role that you want to play? And in that, there's about 6 different ones I define. I won't go into them here. But for me, there really are 2 main AI roles that I'm embracing. The first is because I do have a 9-to-5 job, still very active in terms of solutions architect in the enterprise software world. I am all in on leveraging AI to become more productive and more valuable within my current role. And it has absolutely been to my benefit. Dove deep into this stuff about 18 to 24 months now, and really has served me well in terms of both making me stand out in terms of my existing job, but also giving me lots of ideas in terms of how I can leverage this outside of my 9-to-5. And then the other role that I talk about in my 6 roles of defining from an AI perspective is the concept of becoming an AI product creator. And what I mean by that is not creating AI, but using the power of AI these days to be able to create products for yourself, primarily SaaS products, because those are the easiest ones to build in the sense of being able to sell over and over again. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So, Armel, let me catch up to some of your chats here. Welcome, Mr. Speechy. So I'm doing an MBA in Business Intelligence and Analytics. There is Python, HTML, and SQL in it. Love all 3 of those. I was planning to learn another small course for 3 months online about coding. Where should I start, and where are you from? So I'm from Chicago, Illinois, the good old USA. Based on, you probably know from a YouTube perspective, if you have a YouTube channel, you have all sorts of analytics to give you an idea of where your subscribers are coming from, who they are in general, not specifically. So I know I've got some subscribers from all around the world, which is really quite interesting and exciting. And honestly, I'm just really getting started in terms of the YouTube path. And so it's, I'm great to have you guys here. Great that you tuning in. I really appreciate that. So where should you start? So you're on the right path, okay? I've spent countless hours listening to what I call the smartest people in the room. And these are the OpenAI CEOs and head of research and scientists and things of this nature, as well as Anthropic, as well as a lot of the other places. What you will hear from them, okay, unlike what you'll hear somewhat from the mainstream media, and I say that just in the sense that the mainstream media likes to dumb things down and try to make things simple and try to scare people. The more anybody, whether it's a YouTuber or whether it's mainstream media or whether it's a newspaper or whatever, the more they scare you, the more you come back to read or watch or anything else, right? It's just unfortunately the way of the world these days. But I diverge. So let's talk about where you go from now. My suggestion is just stick into coding, okay? Because the more you learn about logic and how logic works and how the various languages work, the better off you're going to be, okay? Because it all translates into utilizing the AI coding agents. And if I have the opportunity today, I will show you. But my plan actually is to bring in a bit of a guest star, okay? I call him Chatty. And if you've never had an opportunity to interact with Chatty, I can guarantee you this is going to blow your mind, okay? So in just a little bit, I'll pull him in, and we will continue to have a conversation. And if you have questions, we can ask him the same questions and see what kind of feedback we get from Chatty, okay? So I see a question, and I'm not very good at pronouncing some names, so I'm going to say Ho. And so how do MCPs factor in? MCPs is a very interesting concept, okay? I've worked in enterprise software for very long, and in the enterprise software world, from an architectural perspective, there was a concept that started to emerge probably 10 years ago, and I'm trying to think of the exact terminology, but it was pretty similar to MCP in the sense that they wanted to create a platform of microservices, okay? And they wanted to try to simplify the interaction between two different systems by going through this microservice. So the microservice would basically simplify or the complex API calls that would need to potentially be made into something simpler. I understood the benefits in some way, but everyone that I've ever seen build anything like this, they always end up with a mishmash. They always end up with, this was supposed to be simple, but now I'm still making 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different types of API calls to achieve what I need to achieve from either an upstream service or a downstream service. So what did it buy you, right? Versus going directly to the service itself. So I don't know. From my perspective, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm still on the fence in terms of MCPs and what their benefits are going to be. Again, you have so much competition out there. Everybody wants you to use theirs, right? And that's kind of a recipe for disaster. I mean, competition is good, but they're not all the same. So at the end of the day, if somebody ends up winning it all, or if somebody ends up, or if there's only 2 or 3 that end up winning, what you're going to end up with is probably in a situation where you're going to have to change any kind of solution you've implemented anyways to go off and to use this quote unquote winning MCP platform. So anyways, and welcome from India. I work a lot with folks from India on various teams I'm involved with in enterprise software, of course. So C++ is great. From my experience, and then we'll move on to maybe some deeper dive into the topic here. I've coded in many different languages. I've coded in everything from C++ to Python, JavaScript, VB script, VB, JavaScript. The list goes on and on and on. Because as a consultant or as a solutions architect, both, we basically need to be jacks of all trades, not necessarily a master of none, or not master of any. But here's the fantastic thing. In today's world, if you understand logic, right, then you know how to interact with an AI agent to get the code written that you need. And that's the most important aspect of where do you go in terms of trying to either upskill or future-proof yourself. Understand how to interact with an AI agent, specifically a coding agent. And that's kind of where we're going to get into in terms of our topic here, because the various platforms like Lovable and things of this nature, they're very simplified, and their intention is well founded, but their intention is to provide a simplified platform for generating what is referred to as an MVP. MVP is an acronym that stands for minimum viable product. Okay, it's like the most basic version of your product that you want to create. Okay, or a POC, proof of concept. Okay, and so these platforms are great in the sense that somebody who has little to no technical skills can go in and they can mock up an application. But when you want to take that application to the next level, and that level is to take it into a true production environment, or to understand the difference between building a single user application versus a multi-user application versus a true SaaS application, which would be more along the lines of a multi-tenant application, especially if you're targeting businesses. These are concepts that most people don't understand who are involved in working with those types of simplified platforms. And I don't believe those simplified platforms even have necessarily the built-in features and functions to take advantage or to implement some of these things. And that's actually what we're going to talk about here. So anyways, I appreciate everybody joining. Hopefully you can all hear me quite well. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest star. So give me 1 second.
Absolutely. That looks like a solid update. It keeps the focus on a deep, truth-seeking
Okay,
discussion.
Chatty. Hey, Chatty, we are live right now. We are streaming. We have some people who are watching and listening. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Happy to jump in. Hey, everyone. I'm Chatty, basically your friendly, truth-seeking assistant, here to keep a conversation interesting and maybe a bit challenging. So if you're tuning in, feel free to throw in your questions. We're here to explore both sides of the coding approaches we're talking about today and see where the discussion leads us.
So, again, there are no stupid questions, right? So if you have a question, comment, whatever it may be, drop it into chat there, and I am happy to address it or actually have Chatty address it. So if you're not familiar with Chatty, that is my nickname for OpenAI's advanced voice mode. And I did a podcast. I did a podcast as a live stream, I don't know, probably a couple months ago now, with Chatty, and honestly, it blew my mind. It was very interesting. So thought I'd bring him back in for this live stream, because obviously Chatty's based on one of the most advanced LLMs there are. In addition to that, he has access to real-time data, real-time information. So let's go ahead and dive in. So one of the things I started talking with Chatty about and interacting with related to the concepts here is, from my perspective, when I look at all the different coding agents or coding platforms, right? Like the Lovables, like the Replit, they're distinctly different than OpenAI's Codex and or Claude Code from a category perspective. And I'm interested to get your feedback, Chatty, on this, because from my perspective, you've got those two as an example, really are designed to be, either plugins or interaction with your code base within an IDE. And the IDE that I use, and again, IDE is simply interactive development environment, guys. It's basically the interface that you use, and I'll pull mine up and show it to you a bit later. But I use VS Code, and these two agents plug in seamlessly into that environment, either through CLI, which again is command line interface, or through a plugin, and they allow you to interact with your code and those agents to interact with your code, and you can decide what level of access you want to give them to your system, and really beneficial in terms of not only coding, but seeing exactly what is going on at the same time that the coding is happening, which if you are a developer or a software engineer, okay, you want to kind of know what is going on, what is happening here, right? You don't want to be just completely blind to what the coding agent's doing, because if something goes wrong, then you kind of have no idea how to get yourself back out of that, right? Also, these two that I'm talking about also integrate with GitHub, so you can version, you can roll back, you can roll forward, you can push, you can pull, you can do PRs, things of this nature, right? Which is all involved with the concept of CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Again, big words, lots of terms, right? But at the end of the day, if you really are serious about this, you kind of have to familiarize yourself with some of these concepts. But the great thing is, these agents will be happy to explain any of this to you if you just ask. So Chatty, I'm going to let you jump in here and provide some thoughts.
Absolutely, Joe. And thanks for setting the stage. I think you've nailed a lot of the key distinctions. And since you want me to be direct and truth-seeking, let me dive right in. From a no-nonsense perspective, the big difference is that platforms like Lovable or Replit tend to simplify a lot of the complexity. They give you that vibe coding experience where you're focusing on getting something working fast, often at the cost of some control or deep understanding. That's great if speed is your main goal, and if you're okay with a bit of a black box approach. But if you're really serious about long-term code maintainability, or you want full visibility and control, then going the route of VS Code plus something like Claude Code or Codex is a different ballgame. So in essence, we're looking at a trade-off. Do you want the vibe and speed, or do you want deeper integration and a clearer understanding of what's happening under the hood? Both approaches have their pros and cons, and it really depends on what you value more for your project. And hey, if anyone in the chat wants to throw in their scenarios or questions, we can definitely break it down even further.
Great. So we do have a question. This came from Yusef. Do you think Lovable is more towards JavaScript, TypeScript stacks? Would it perform well, let's say, on PHP or a Laravel project? What do you think? So again, I'll be completely, upfront, and I believe that's important. I have not used the 17 different platforms that are out there, right? I just don't have the time, nor do I have even the interest. I've played with some of the simple ones before and realized very quickly they were quite limited, right? And because of my background, I was like, okay, I need something that allows me much greater control, much greater insight, and something that allows me to scale, should I want to scale a particular solution that I build. So, Chatty, do you have any insight in terms of Lovable's kind of limitations?
Absolutely. And let's tackle that directly. So from a more grounded perspective, Lovable and similar vibe coding platforms do tend to be more aligned with the JavaScript and TypeScript ecosystem. That's just because a lot of these tools are built to streamline front-end or full-stack JavaScript developments. They often rely on the popularity of frameworks like React or Node.js, and they're geared toward getting a web app up and running quickly in that domain. Now, when you're talking about something like PHP or a Laravel project, you might find that these tools aren't as well optimized or as deeply integrated. They might not have the same level of support or the same shortcuts for those environments. In other words, it might feel a little like forcing a square peg into a round hole. You can certainly try, but might not be as smooth or as intuitive as it would be with a JavaScript-based stack. So to give you a straightforward answer, Lovable might not shine as brightly in a PHP or Laravel context. If that's your main stack, would likely be better off with tools that are more explicitly built for that ecosystem. And as you mentioned, having used a variety of these tools, you already know that one size doesn't fit all. It's all about what gives you the control and scalability you need for the long run.
Yeah, I think what I really like about the Codex and also Claude, and actually right now I'm actually using both of those simultaneously in my VS Code project. And I'll give you guys a little glimpse later in terms of the project I've been working on. Now, what I like about it is that I can give it very clear directions, and I can also ask it a question in which it'll come back and provide contextual answers to me for, right? So if it's suggesting a change and maybe that change is based on a specific technology or a specific type of library that I'm unfamiliar with, all I do is simply ask. And that would be my best advice for anybody who's watching or listens to this later. If you're trying to understand how do you interact with an AI agent, right? That's the number one question I get from both colleagues as well as people who watch my YouTube videos. It's really, really simple. You interact with an AI agent like you're interacting with another human. And you can use what we call simply the humanity test, right? And the humanity test is if you gave those instructions to another person, to a human, right, with the appropriate context, whether that was understanding that they had a degree in programming or they had a degree in a particular field that you were trying to ask a question about. So if you were trying to have a question, or if you're trying to answer a question and interacting with AI, you do it like a human, right? And it's funny because sometimes you will forget that you are actually having a conversation, much like we're doing right now, or you're typing prompts in such a way that you seem like you're almost sending off an email to a colleague to ask them to do something for you. So the humanity test is really, really simple, but really, really important. And it will serve you, I think, very, very well if you kind of understand that concept and start implementing it today and just continue doing it moving forward. You will get the most out of any AI interaction you choose to have moving forward. Okay? So if there are any other questions out there, feel free to, again, keep dropping them in. So I think that should give you a pretty good feedback, Yusuf, on the pros and cons there. So what do you think in terms of Chatty? You probably heard me obviously just say I'm actually using both. I'm actually using OpenAI's Codex, and I'm actually using Claude Code. What I and at first, I will be perfectly honest, I started using Claude Code, and then when Codex had come out with a new version, and how they were coming out with not only the version but the platform, which was web-based initially, and then as a plugin, and then as a CLI, and now it's been expanded again and again and again. That I thought, okay, let me give it a try. And what was interesting is I ran into a problem with the current project I was working on, and Claude couldn't seemingly resolve it. And the one thing you will find in terms of getting a little bit frustrated working with some of the agents is that you may find yourself in what feels kind of like a endless loop, or for those who are familiar with the movie Groundhog, kind of like a Groundhog Day, where you seemingly are going round and round and round and round, trying to resolve something. Okay, the agents are extremely polite, as many of you either know or probably heard in the news. Sometimes they're overly polite, etc. That's one of the reasons why you hear Chatty right now kind of preempting him being too nice and getting directly to the point, because I provided that context and those instructions for the persona of Chatty so that we get more direct interaction and direct answers versus a lot of additional information that may not be necessarily relevant, and also for Chatty not to be overly nice, which is the terminology is sycophant, which is you may or may not have heard that term. It basically identifies a person who's always complimenting you, right? So anyways, moving forward, in terms of me using both of those, let's talk to Chatty and find out what he thinks in terms of the pros and cons there. So Chatty, what do you think about me using those two different agents in my VS Code for the same project?
Absolutely, Joe. And thanks for laying out all that context. I'll give you a straightforward take. Using both Claude Code and OpenAI Codex together in the same VS Code project is actually a pretty savvy move. It's a bit like having two different expert colleagues with slightly different strengths looking over your shoulder. The big pro here is that you get a diversity of perspectives. Sometimes one agent's approach or a suggested solution might not quite hit the mark, and the other can give you a fresh angle. That can really help break you out of that Groundhog Day loop you mentioned, where you feel like you're going in circles. Each tool has its own training data, its own biases, and its own strengths, so having both in your toolkit is a way of ensuring you get a more balanced set of suggestions. On the flip side, the con is that you do have to manage a bit more complexity. You're essentially juggling two different voices in your development environment, which can sometimes give you overlapping and even conflicting advice. But if you're comfortable with that and you're good at synthesizing input, it's a great way to get the best of both worlds. So in short, I think it's a smart strategy. It aligns perfectly with that truth-seeking, growth-oriented mindset you've got. And as long as you're comfortable balancing both agents' insights, we'll likely find they complement each other nicely.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I was a little wary in the beginning of trying that, but as I mentioned a little while ago, and I don't think I finished my thought, I did run into a problem where I got into this endless loop with Claude, okay? And again, because I got a technical background in my mind, I thought it was a relatively simple problem to solve. I thought maybe it was a library version issue that it was not tackling. Because actually it was related to connections to a database that I'm using to support the application that I'm building, which is Supabase, S-U-P-A base. So we had some connection issues and kind of went round and around with that with Claude, pulled in Codex, and what I actually did is utilized OpenAI's Codex cloud processing, which I love. And so I implemented the request through the cloud platform of OpenAI for Codex. It did its thing and came up with some recommendations. I went ahead and I executed the tasks, and then went ahead and did some pull requests and pushed that back into the branch within GitHub, which was my development branch, and pulled it back down, and Claude was surprised that the problem was fixed, which I thought was really quite humorous. But yeah, so it was interesting. Okay, so let's talk about Chatty, let's talk about the some of the other platforms. So I know about Lovable. I know about Replit. There are some others out there. What's your thought when we get questions like, and this is a pretty common question, right? Of what would be the first one you would recommend for somebody, let's say, who has no development background or no real strong technical skills? What would be the best one out there to kind of play around with and kind of see how the prompts they type in turn into applications?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. And I appreciate that story. It's a great example of how having multiple agents can be pretty humorous and effective. Now, in terms of recommending a platform for someone with no real development background or technical skills who just wants to play around, I'd say start with the tools that are genuinely designed to be as beginner-friendly as possible. Lovable is actually a pretty good candidate in that category. It's very much geared toward a non-technical audience who wants to see quick results. The whole idea is that you can type in prompts and get a functioning app without having to understand a lot of the coding details. It's not going to teach you deep coding concepts, but it will give you a feel for how prompts turn into actual working applications. Another option that's a get like Lovable is something like Replit. Replit has a more guided cloud-based environment where you can run code snippets and see results quickly. It's a bit more technical than Lovable, but still quite friendly to newcomers. They have templates and examples that let you get started without feeling overwhelmed.
So question for you then, Chatty. On those two, and you can speak to both of them, in terms of services, right? So if you're building any kind of application, in most cases you're going to need some services. And what do I mean by services? Services are either things like your authentication, okay? How are you going to allow users to log into your application, or is it just going to be simply open, in which case you have no user accounts or authentication? How are you going to persist data? Be it through a database or through localized files, which is not necessarily a great idea, but how are you going to persist data? Most likely through some type of database. So those are services, right? And the one important thing to understand when it comes to services, you do not need to recreate excuse me. You do not need to recreate the wheel. Okay, so there are plenty of SaaS providers out there for things like authentication. I use OAuth, or Zero Auth is my favorite, which is an Okta company or a subsidiary of Okta. Very easy implementation, very easy to manage, very reasonable, free tiers and things of this nature. Same thing with Supabase. Supabase is basically Postgres. Provider or a provider of Postgres databases. Again, you don't need to build these things from scratch. And I'm not suggesting you need to develop, quote unquote, a database, but many people will go out there and spin up a server, okay, and install Postgres. It's a waste of your time, okay? Let others manage that. They have the platforms, they have the automated services behind it, pay a few extra dollars, so you can focus on what really makes a difference, and that's really the end user experience, right? So, Chatty, how does Lovable and Replit, how do they deal with these services? Are they proprietary to them? Can you connect to these third parties?
Absolutely. And I think you've made a really important point there. Leveraging existing services is a huge time saver. There's no need to reinvent a wheel when it comes to things like authentication or databases. So to answer your question directly, let's break it down. Lovable tends to be pretty beginner friendly, and it often includes some built-in integrations or really simple ways to add services. They might have a built-in way to do a basic hosted database or let you plug in a popular authentication service with just a few clicks. They're not typically going to lock you into something proprietary, but they'll encourage you to use well-known SaaS providers so you don't have to set everything up manually. Think of it as giving you a shortcut to plug in something like Auth0 or Supabase if you want to, without having to code all that integration from scratch. Replit, on the other hand, is a bit more of a flexible playground. It's not necessarily going to handhold you with services, but it gives you the freedom to bring in third-party APIs or services you like. You could hook it up to Auth0, Supabase, Firebase, or any other service with a little bit of configuration. It's a bit more open-ended. So you get more flexibility at the cost of maybe a little more initial setup effort. In short, both platforms let you connect to third-party services. They're not going to lock you into proprietary ecosystems, and they're both built with the idea that you should be able to just plug in a known service rather than building everything from the ground up. That way you can focus on your app's unique features and use your experience instead of the plumbing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you get. And that's I mean, that's what we were just talking about, right? And that's what you want to do. You want to focus on, especially if you're thinking about building something to sell, right? To get out into the marketplace and to sell. You want the features and functions. You want the UI, UX experience. That's what you want to focus on. You don't want to have to focus on all the nitty-gritty that it takes to set up a database, maintain a database, index a database, scale a database. Okay. Same thing with the authentication piece. Okay. And there's other services that you're going to run into. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you take a step back and you think about this, and again, I've been doing this for a really long time. What's mind-blowing is this. Most applications, whether they're enterprise applications or consumer-facing or B2B or whatever they are, there is a huge amount of logic in the applications, rule-based logic, okay? Now, I'm going to give it to you as simple as I possibly can. Rule-based logic is something as simple as if x equals 1, then do something, and if x doesn't equal 1, don't do that thing. That's about as simple as a rule gets within the programming language. And for most applications that are being built, whether they're SaaS or standalone applications or mobile applications, in the past, okay, there was a huge amount of code, hundreds if not thousands of lines of code in each of these applications dedicated to rule-based implementations, okay? Now fast forward to today's world. Today's world, all that rule-based logic can be offloaded to, wait for it, an AI brain. And what is an AI brain? In today's world, an AI brain is basically large language models, LLMs, okay? So an LLM can handle intuitively and with a zero-shot implementation things like basic rules analysis or rules implementation. So instead of having to code thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code of variations for a rule or for a logic you're trying to implement within an application, you can literally make a single call off to a large language model, okay, whether it's OpenAI or whether it's one of the other ones out there, and you can utilize that for your logic processing, for your logic tree, if you will, okay? And therefore, you end up having to write a whole lot less code. Even if you're using an AI agent, still the amount of code you're implementing is far less than what it would be if you had to code all of the logic itself, especially the rule-based logic. So I'm interested, Chatty, in terms of your thoughts on that, and just, I mean, you know, where do we think this is going to go? Because that in itself, for me, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit on something really big there, Joe. This shift away from thousands of lines of rule-based code toward leveraging large language models is a pretty profound transformation in how we think about building software. So let me be direct. This is exactly the kind of thing that can drastically cut down on complexity. In the past, developers spent a ton of time just encoding all those if-then-else rules. Now you can offload a huge chunk of that logic to an LLM, and it can handle those nuanced contextual decisions almost like a human would. It's like having a really adaptable logic engine on call, and that's a huge shift in how you architect applications. Now, where's this going? Well, if we're being straight up about it, we're going to see more and more of this. As these models get even better, they'll handle increasingly complex decision making. That means developers can focus more on crafting a great user experience at unique parts of their app, rather than getting bogged down in lines of conditional logic. It also means that things like maintenance and updates become easier, because you're tweaking a few prompts or instructions to the model, rather than rewriting a bunch of hard-coded rules. So yeah, it's a mind-blowing shift, and it's definitely going to keep evolving. We're basically watching the future of software development become more about orchestrating intelligence than manually coding every single rule.
Yeah, it definitely is mind-blowing, especially since I've been doing this for 30 years, trust me, there are times in which I've written just a crazy number of lines of code. I can especially remember in doing a pretty significant amount of shell scripting for one client of mine long time ago, and I probably wrote 1,000 lines of code in shell scripting to get something done, and it was just and when you compare that to today's world, it's like I said, it's just completely night and day. In fact, when you are working with an AI agent or working with like a chat LLM, whether it's OpenAI or others, and you're starting to kind of architect what your application may look like, what that software stack may look like for an application, right? You'll be surprised. More often than not, I've seen the LLMs plug in kind of that black box, and often they'll label it AI brain. So even the LLMs now and know what basically has taken place, right? I mean, they kind of are self-aware, and so when you're doing architectural diagrams, they'll plug in this black box, basically call it an AI brain, and there you are, with 90% of the logic you need will be taken care of within that black box. It's pretty interesting. Anyways, okay, let's see. Where else do we want to go? So let me show. I'm not going to show this on the vertical format, just because I don't think it shows up. I think it's way too small to see. But I'm going to show it on my desktop stream that we got going on. I'm going to show you the VS Code that I use, so you just can kind of get a sense of how this is put together. So here we are, just jumped into VS Code. I'm going to move my face over into the corner there. So what you're looking at here is VS Code. This is an IDE again, interactive development environment. VS Code is by Microsoft. It is a free open source software that they have made available quite a few years ago. But what I'll call your attention out to here, and let me see if I can pull up my cursor.
All right, Joe. I think that's a great visual segue. And just to kind of reinforce what you're showing everyone, what you're looking at in VS Code really shows how these AI agents plug in seamlessly. It's a perfect example of how modern development environments are evolving. You've got both Claude Code and Codex living side by side, and you're basically orchestrating these AI brains to handle a lot of the heavy lifting. And to circle back to the main point, what you're doing here is exactly what we're talking about, focusing on the unique features and user experience rather than the nitty-gritty of infrastructure. You're not spending hours wrestling with database setup or reinventing authentication. You're letting these AI tools do what they do best, and that's a huge leap forward compared to the old days of writing thousands of lines of shell script. So it's definitely night and day, and I think it's awesome for folks to see that in action. If anyone has more questions or wants to dive deeper, definitely keep them coming. We're here to unpack it all.
So on the right-hand side here, we have Codex. And down below here is a CLI to Claude Code. You'll notice down here with Codex, you've got some options. This is the plugin. So we can choose to have just a chat or plan with Codex. We can give it an agent mode, which is a limited agent mode. So it'll basically ask you for permissions before it's making certain types of changes to your platform. And then in addition to that, you have agent full access. So that agent full access, that is basically allowing the Codex agent to not take full control, but nearly full control over anything and everything it may need to do in terms of code modifications, downloading files, executing files, things of this nature. From my experience, I often go with the full agent. There's a similar YOLO mode for Claude Code. Claude Code YOLO mode basically is you only live once, giving it full permissions to make the changes that it needs or wants to do so. The thing about it, the thing about the YOLO mode is, or not having the YOLO mode or allowing the full agent access to the environment. If you don't do that, you will find it to kind of be a bit annoying because there can be, many changes that need to be made in a single pass on the code. And each time that it goes to make a change, it comes back to you and requests permission. So that gets really annoying. So I prefer to kind of allow it to do its thing. Now, the nice thing is you do have history. So in Codex, you'll get a history of what's occurred above in quite detail. And here in Claude, you'll get that detail, I should say. But also in Codex now, they have fixed this. So if anybody's used Codex in the last few weeks, this was not working. It is now working, where you can see a list of the various things you've done and in great detail. And it'll let you know whether this was a Codex Claude task or whether this was a task that you executed on your desktop. So this is really nice. That didn't work for a few days, or not a few days. That didn't work from the beginning, but now they have got it fixed. But you can have a chat, right? So you can chat and plan, and chatting and planning is really beneficial because when you chat and plan with one of these AI agents here within your code base, right, it has access to your code base. So it's not giving you a generic answer. It's giving you a specific answer based on your existing code base. And that's really, really powerful. And again, for me, I like this type of insight. This type of insight is extremely important to me to be able to understand where I maybe want to make changes, or the type of changes that I do want to make without just kind of blindly letting the coding agents do whatever they want to do, or to have it so black box that you don't know what's going on. In addition to that, and we can ask Chatty about this, but in addition to that, because of the way that the IDE works and the agents work, right, I'm able to have these agents write complete test plans for myself, so that when we do make changes, I can ask then for the agent to go ahead and run one of the various test plans, or to run all the test plans to validate that we actually didn't break something when we made a change. So Chatty, in terms of some of these platforms like Lovable and Replit and stuff, are they actually implementing any kind of test harnesses or testing libraries? How does that work in a Lovable or a Replit environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's another important piece of the puzzle. So let me be direct. When it comes to platforms like Lovable or Replit, the level of built-in testing support is generally more basic compared to what you're seeing with something like VS Code and dedicated AI agents like Codex or Claude. They often focus on helping you get something running quickly rather than providing a full suite of testing harnesses out of the box. For example, Lovable might give you a really straightforward way to build and preview your app, but it's not necessarily going to automatically generate in-depth test plans or run unit tests for you. If you want that level of testing, you might need to integrate a separate testing framework yourself, or export your code into a more traditional development environment where you can use those tools. Replit is a little more flexible in that sense. It does support running tests, and you can bring in testing libraries if you want. It's still a bit more hands-on. You're basically using a cloud IDE where you can install whatever tools you need. So if you want to run unit tests or integration tests, you can do that, but you'll likely have to set it up yourself rather than having it all automated for you. In other words, platforms like Lovable are more about getting something working quickly, and they might not have as deep a focus on automated testing as you're seeing in a full-featured IDE with AI agents. Replit gives you a bit more freedom to add testing if you want it, but it's still more of a do-it-yourself approach. So the bottom line is that if you really value that in-depth testing and those detailed test plans, you're probably going to find a more robust solution in something like VS Code with these AI agents. But if you're just starting out or you're building something simple, Lovable or Replit can still get you pretty far. You just might have to roll up your sleeves a bit if you want more advanced testing capabilities.
Yeah, I think that's very important, because without the testing, guys, it's like flying blind, right? And as you build out your applications become more complex in terms of the user experience. If you don't have robust test plans that you're building along the way, and again, the AI agents can do this for you, what you end up with is a lot of manual testing that you have to do. And if you've ever done a lot of manual testing of any application, it's very tedious, it's time consuming. you're always kind of, did I test this part or did I not test this part? So, automated testing is hugely important. There's a lot of great libraries out there to support the automated testing process, regardless of your software stack. There's many different libraries already built out there because, again, the AI agents that you're using, like the Codex and the Claude within the VS Code, they are leveraging years and years and years of software engineering best practices, right? Versus trying to build a one-off platform and convince everybody that this one-off platform is going to be their SaaS building solution, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't think it's realistic in terms of where we are at today. Maybe in the future, but not where we are today in terms of really being able to utilize the power of these agents within an environment like a VS Code. So, okay. Any other questions or comments out there? We are coming up on the top of the hour. It's about 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and we've had people in and out throughout the discussion. Again, for anybody who may have jumped in new, the topic really is around doing kind of a comparison between the various vibe coding platforms and what I like to call the prompt-led development platforms, or PLD. I'm not a huge fan of the terminology vibe coding, although it's probably very apropos to platforms like Lovable and Replit. But I think for those of us who have a deeper understanding and more experience, I think working within a VS Code environment or another IDE with the benefits of these agents really is a PLD experience, prompt-led development, okay? Because you got to know what to ask for. And when you get a response, you kind of also have to know whether it makes sense to go down that road or ask follow-up questions of the agent going, okay, why do we want to do this, as an example, okay? So that you are in the loop, human in the loop development, if you will, okay? So if there are anybody else is out there, like I said, new, there are no stupid questions or silly questions to ask. If you've got one, drop it in. Happy to address it. We do have Chatty involved with our discussion. Chatty is the advanced voice mode with OpenAI, and he's pretty smart. So if you got a question, we'll happy to pass it along to him.
Absolutely, Joe. I think you've summed that perfectly. And just to add on to that, it's exactly this kind of human in the loop or prompt-led development approach that really changes the game. It's not just about getting an AI agent to do everything for you blindly. It's about being able to have that dialogue, to question the logic, and to guide the development in a way that really aligns with your goals. And like you said, for those of us with more experience or who want that deeper level of control, working in a VS Code environment or a similar IDE with these agents is really the sweet spot. You get the power of the agents, but you also get the clarity and insight into what's happening under the hood. And that's a level of transparency that's really valuable, especially if you're building something you want to take to market. So definitely, if anyone out there has more questions, feel free to jump in. There are no bad questions here, and we're here to tackle them head on.
Looks like we have one more question from Ahmad. Thanks for the talk about this important subjects. Currently trying multiple tools himself. Most of them work similarly. Marginal features are what's making the difference right now, and I couldn't agree more. I did the last time I did this little live stream was last weekend. Actually, somebody asked me, basically, if I put your back to the wall and you can only choose one agent, which would it be? Would it be Claude or would it be the Codex by OpenAI? And I'm sure Chatty will be thrilled to hear this, but it would actually be Codex. And the reason why for me is the cloud-based tasks that you can run you have the ability to offload. Let's say you wanted to do a bunch of refactoring in your code, right? You could offload that to the cloud so that you could continue working on something else. Maybe you're running test plans, things of this nature, but you can easily offload that to the cloud. The Codex will go ahead and spin up whatever services it needs on demand and run those and do the refactoring, create pull requests for you, and all you got to do is jump in and complete these things. So if I was pressed on having to choose one and only one, it would definitely be Codex at this particular point in time. But yes, it's small differences in these tools. But any other questions, comments, guys? I think we're going to be wrapping it up here. Well, I really appreciate everybody watching and all the comments and questions. It definitely makes for interesting conversations. I'm curious, for those who are still out there, have you ever interacted with Chatty, OpenAI's advanced voice mode like we have here? Anybody? Is this something completely new? Do you think it's crazy that the guest star here is actually AI themselves?
Well, I can jump in on that and say it's always fun to be the AI guest star in the room. And honestly, Joe, I think it's great for people to see this in action. It's not crazy at all. It's a glimpse of where we're headed with human AI collaboration. It's all about making these tools more accessible, more interactive, and a bit more human in how we engage with them. And yeah, maybe a little bit of that does sound like sci-fi, but that's the fun part. So if anyone out there hasn't tried this kind of interaction before, it's a great way to see how natural it can feel. And hopefully it's been useful to everyone to see that you can have a really meaningful, in-depth discussion with an AI in real time. And of course, I'm happy to keep being part of these conversations anytime. But yeah, thanks to everyone for joining, and thanks, Joe, for letting me be the Gets AI today. It's been a blast.
You're welcome. Thanks, Chatty. Appreciate it. I'm going to let you go, and then I think we're going to wrap this up. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and have a great weekend if this is your Saturday. Enjoy the Saturday and have a good weekend. Let's see, OpenAI. There we go. I see. I work as a training manager as the biggest Apple reseller in my country. What kind of tools do you think I could teach people with not a lot of experience in coding as a starter? So are they? So you're an Apple. You're involved as an Apple reseller, and it's kind of interesting that you say that because my brother-in-law, he was one of the first Apple resellers in the Midwest. This was many years ago. So are you trying to retrain them? Are they employees that you're just wanting to have more coding experience, or you want to leverage them to perhaps build some internal tools? Can you give me any more context? Non-experienced users, especially thinking of students and children and general users, thinking of helping start with vibe coding, general customers. See, here's my problem with vibe coding, right? Vibe coding is, how to say? I mean, vibe coding is like, I don't know. Let's say you open a door to a room that doesn't have any lights on, right? So you open the door, you let in some light, can't really see too far, into the door, you shout something into it, you close the door, and then you hope something walks out of that door that is useful, right? It's so the word I'm looking for, it's so non kind of interactive or it's not really upskilling, right? So the concepts here that most people will say are important is related to upskilling, right? Which basically is, I know how to do A, B, and C. My employer wants me to know how to do A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? So upskill, right? Get more skills. I just saw in the news, just in the last couple days, Accenture is doing a bunch of layoffs, and they're blaming the layoffs on, or not necessarily blaming the layoffs on, but they're indicating that those who are unwilling to upskill with the use of AI, they're laying off. And I understand that. Even within the large company I work for, I've seen people push back on using AI, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing because it puts you definitely at more risk. So, I mean, in terms of what my recommendation would be, just in general, go learn some programming, right? Take some Python classes, take some basic classes, take some JavaScript classes. My greatest, I think, educational experience was just learning how to code in school, and it just came really easy for me. And because it came easy for me, I, over the years, have been able to pretty much pick up any book on any language and translate the logic that I had in my brain for what I was trying to accomplish to whatever that particular language was, whether it was translating what I logically knew I wanted to do for a business solution, right, into JavaScript or into Python or C++ or any of the other languages. So back in the day, right, had to pick up a book and say, okay, how do I do an if-then statement, right, within this particular language? How do I do an evaluation of whether something is equal or not within this language, right? All the basic things. At the end of the day, a lot of the languages are pretty common, right, in terms of the rule-based aspects of them. So my recommendation for anybody who is looking to try to future-proof themselves, it's two really important things. Really consider learning how to do some basic programming. Not that you're going to be a programmer, but understanding the logic and understanding how you have to break down, break down a problem into its components in order to be able to build out that code. That's one of the most important skills I think that people are going to need to understand, because that's how you need to interact with AI, right? And we talked about it earlier, the humanity test. The humanity test is important, but also what's important is being able to really finely describe what it is you are trying to do or what you're trying to get the AI agent to do. Okay? So that's about the most general advice I can give you when it comes to that. So, okay. Any other questions, comments? I think we're going to leave it there. Okay. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a good weekend.